Hey guys, this is Matt, aka Blitz. Pretty excited to show you guys some gameplay today because I just hit level 60 on all 5 classes in Diablo 3. This is the gameplay of the final moments on my Witch Doctor, where I hit level 60 and unlock Inferno, get the achievement for all classes level 60, and the achievement for 5 characters at level 60. I wanted to share some thoughts with you guys about all the different classes and some good ways to level, some good skills to use. I know there's a lot of good guides and tips out there already from people who have had a lot of experience with their specific class, but I just wanted to share some general thoughts about everything since I've done all the classes to 60 now and seeing what works, what doesn't, what I like, and all that good stuff. I guess first I'll start with the Witch Doctor, and I'll say right now that the Witch Doctor is actually my least favorite class out of all of them. Saved it for last for good reason, and I liked it during certain periods of time during the process, but in the end, really, I think I like every single other class better. The Demon Hunter was actually the last class that I tried out, but it's the one that I like the most. So it seems to be the opposite here. The last one that I got to 60, I actually hate the most. So the best way that I found to level early on is probably using the fire bats to just clear out big packs of people and using your pets to take aggro and tank for you. You can really get a nice combo going on with the Templar and the 3 or 4 zombie dogs depending on your talents and the ogre guy. The nice thing about this is you can kind of just sit right in the middle of the action and just blast away everything that gets near you. Not really have to worry too much. You might have to worry a little bit about mana consumption, but in general there's a lot of level ranges where just spamming fire bats really I think is personally the way to go. But I'm also a guy who likes to use his pets, so that could be another thing. Later on, once you progress through Hell, the pets stop being as useful. Really, they don't really do that much damage. They don't seem to like scale all the way, and your dogs are just completely worthless because they just get one-shotted by anything. So I kind of had to switch around a bit. Level 54, you unlock the zombie bears, which are extremely useful and just ridiculously high DPS. So I used those for a while. I liked them, but having to rely on your mana consumption really wasn't the way I wanted to play this class. And plus, once you're in melee range and you only have one pet helping you out, you really can't play as safe, and you have to really be watching yourself and moving in and out. And so I decided why not just go all out ranged and see what I can do with that. And so that's what you see here. I'm using the build that I used for the end of Hell in Act 4, basically relying on my Splinter talent on the poison darts to do all of my DPS. With nice attack speed and a good weapon, you can really just pump out insane damage. I mean, my gear is pretty bad in this video that you're watching right now, and just the numbers are devastating too. Even huge packs, even though it's primarily single target DPS, you can really just wipe out a lot of people in a short period of time. And you can see a lot of my abilities are based on kiting and basically being defensive. A lot of times it's probably not necessary, but I mean, you can look at and see how much control I have over all of these people. So it's really nice to be able to play safe and be able to not pay as much attention, and you always have some of your cooldowns to protect yourself if you get into a really bad situation. So this is probably the way that I would recommend if you're having trouble with the Witch Doctor. Otherwise, might as well you go all out and AoE stuff when you can. If you can get away with it, definitely do it, because this isn't necessarily the highest damage build possible. There's a lot of other ways to do it. There's the talent that makes you use all of your mana very quickly and do a lot of damage, and that's the one I'm using right now because obviously the Poison Dart doesn't rely on mana, but there's a lot of other nice talents such as Vision Quest, which boost your mana regeneration by a lot. So again, there's a lot of ways to go. This is the way that I landed at the end. I would definitely recommend the Fire Bats when you're at low level and just adjust things as necessary from there. So I'm going to work backwards here from the classes that I got to level 60 first. The one that I hit level 60 on most recently besides this was the Monk. I believe that was 2 nights ago, and I really started off not liking the Monk. I couldn't get the hang of it. I would try dual wield and a bunch of other stuff. In the end, I ended up with a one-hander and a shield, and I think that's definitely the way to go for my playstyle. The way that I went was, with my gear, I would basically go offensive and just get tons of dexterity. Really only get vitality if you can do it without sacrificing too much dexterity. I think I was using something like 18,000 HP in Hell, so that's really not very much. I think my Witch Doctor had something like 25,000. And the way I did it was basically rotating out a couple spells. I had immunity, so obviously stopping all damage regardless of how much health you have. I had the heal, that really does a ton, and I had something on it to boost my damage when I use it. I had the blind, which takes care of all the enemies in melee range, of course, and I had the dodge aura, which is both passive and active, which restores a little bit of your health when you're using the right passive to have spirit consumption help your health. And yeah, so I basically just rotated out those abilities, and you can kind of just go from one to the other and stop most of the damage coming in on you. Even though you die pretty quickly without those abilities, you're almost always in a position where you can just use one of them at least and get yourself into a good position to do damage. And if you're using all dexterity on your gear, you're going to be killing things pretty quickly. So by the time you've rotated those abilities, you probably killed what you're fighting. And if you're fighting an elite, you can just kind of use a little bit more care and kite back a little bit while you're waiting for abilities. Maybe pick up a couple health globes from other mobs, but should pretty much be fine. I didn't really have too much trouble like other people seem to through Hell. Talked to a lot of people who are struggling just getting through Hell and finding themselves undergeared and all that. It just really seemed quite easy to me. I think if I was going to make a hardcore character, I would probably make it a monk. For damage output, I basically just used my spirit generating ability. I forget the name off the top of my head, but it's the one that punches 10 times real quick in about a second. And on my right click, I had the one that just passively does damage to everything around you. And so I really didn't rely on Spirit at all, and that was nice for the defensive skills that I just mentioned because I always had Spirit available, really. I could just do as much damage as I wanted, and I wasn't worrying about using the Bell ability or anything like that to spend the Spirit, so I thought that really worked out well. Obviously, it's nice to have a good shield because it just means that you can be that much more carefree when you're using your defensive abilities, knowing that you have, 10% less damage coming in, something like that, depending on your shield. So I would probably recommend that if you're having some trouble. Obviously, like I said, for the Witch Doctor, if you're not having any trouble, feel free to, go all the way, use dual wield, something like that. I don't really like two-handers just because of how slow it is for the monk abilities, but I wouldn't say don't do dual wield if you're low level and you want to just smash through some people, but if you start having trouble and you don't know what to change, I would probably say the first thing to change is get yourself a good shield. So that's about all I have to say for the monk. Again, I thought it was a pretty easy time, and I really like the class. Character I had before my monk was my barbarian. I think I hit 60 on that one about a week ago now, probably. I really played it similar to the monk. I started off just kind of playing around with everything. I had dual wield for most of my time, and then at some point a friend told me to use a two-hander, so I used that for a while, and then someone told me to use a shield, so I did that for a while. So I got a little taste of everything. I have to say I've had pretty good success with all three of those types of things, just depending on the particular weapons and shields themselves and what the stats were at the time. I pretty much went through most of my abilities, and I really liked just relying on cleave and just attacking big groups of enemies, especially if I was in a group with friends with everyone with big AoE attacks, and I could just kind of smash through stuff effortlessly. I really like to have stun on me at all times. I really like to have leap, especially with the armor bonus one, just so I can use it defensively too. Of course, revenge. I mean, if you're playing a barbarian, you probably know that you should be using that skill. And then I played around with some other stuff like the battle shout ability and that kind of thing. Eventually, I went with the passive to boost your damage when you have full fury. That way I could just spam frenzy and smash down an elite single target, because I started at some point having trouble with elites. I really wasn't doing enough damage or not having enough health or some combination of the two usually, and elites were really giving me trouble, so I decided to switch my abilities from an AoE based thing to a solo single target type build. I used the Enchantress on that one. I'm not really going to talk about the followers much here, but the Barbarian was the first one that I really had to evaluate which follower I wanted and what their abilities are. There's some other good videos out on YouTube from other people besides myself talking about the pros and cons of all that, so I'll just say use Enchantress. It's pretty damn good for the Barbarian, and for most classes really, but Barbarian and Monk for sure. So yeah, the Barbarian was again a simple like Monk. Probably had a little bit more trouble with my Barbarian than my Monk. Overall, he probably had a bit worse gear, but I don't know, something about the Monk style I really liked, because you could just go immune, and something with an immune and a CC breaker is the class I like to play in games like this typically, so I think the Barbarian is probably a bit more gear dependent, and if I would have had the best gear, I probably would have liked that more. And that's probably what I'll do in Inferno before Monk, just because with the Monk I'm going to have to go way more defensive than I was in normal Nightmare and Hell. But yeah, Barbarian's a great class, had a lot of fun with it, and hope I get the chance one day to play a Barbarian with really good gear, because I think that would probably be one of my lowest priority characters to play through Inferno with. After that, I had the Wizard. Wizard was the first character I started the game with. It was the one I played on day one, and the one that I played for a lot of hours, and really learned most of the game through playing my Wizard. I didn't actually hit 60 on it first because I decided to play a Demon Hunter for just a change of pace and for speedrunning and all that stuff. Like I said earlier, Demon Hunter was the last class I tried, but the first one I hit 60 with just because I fell in love with it. Wizard was a lot of fun. I played a lot of builds with that too, just because since it was my first character, I had absolutely no idea what to do here. Hadn't played Diablo 2, no idea what to expect really. So I played around with a lot of the different stuff you can do with the Wizard. It's a really interesting class in that you have a lot of options to play the way you want, and people probably say that about whatever class they play too, sure, but I really felt like the Wizard had the most options and had so many different playstyles. There's the Hydra-centered builds that people are doing a lot in Inferno right now. There's the Venom Hydra, which is just absolutely insane DPS no matter what. If you're playing Wizard and you haven't tried Venom Hydra just because you read the tooltip and you didn't think that whatever percent damage sounded interesting, you should definitely try the Venom Hydra, because that will pretty much melt everything that it sits in. So if you can get someone to stand still somewhere, it'll absolutely tear right through them. Another popular Hydra is the Arcane one. You use some talents that I won't really discuss to slow their movement speed and all that stuff. I didn't find that build interesting. There's other tutorials around to talk about that one. The one that I stuck with the most through my leveling process was the defensive style thing, kind of like the Monk, where I used stuff like Frost Nova, stuff like the Wave of Force to blast them back. Pretty much everything defensive in my skills. Of course, the Diamond Skin had Teleport in there for a while. I played around with a lot of stuff like that. And basically, I had most of my skills defensive, and then I would just go all offensive with my gear and with my playstyle in general. It's really nice to be able to be a complete glass cannon. I mean, they even have a passive in the game called Glass Cannon, so obviously they want that to be an option for you. It's really nice to be able to be that completely offensive character and yet have those defensive cooldowns to get you through the bad times. So you can really play just completely all-out offensive. Best defense is a good offense, and yet you'll still survive because you have those options when you need them every 10-15 seconds or whatever it is. So I'd say if you want to play that kind of style, just play around with the defensive options. There's a bunch of them. I really liked Frost Nova almost all the time because you can get it down to, I think, 9 seconds or so with one of its runes. Really liked Wave of Force because it's not bad damage for the low health mobs, and at the same time it's a really helpful ability for defensive. Obviously Diamond Skin probably going to be in pretty much every Wizard build you ever try, and Teleport had its nice situations. But try out stuff, see what you like, and I would probably recommend the Arcane Orb as your main damaging ability. That really did me well through most of the game. I think pretty much all the way 1 to 60. Of course, whenever I unlocked it, I pretty much used Arcane Orb as my main damaging ability. For the signature spell, I think Chain Lightning is really great early on. I can't remember when you get specific runes, but Chain Lightning is pretty amazing through most of the times. I played around with a bunch of different kind of things. You have the lightning balls and all kinds of stuff, and I think in the end, really, the Chain Lightning is the way to go early on. And then once you get the Piercing Orb, that's probably what I would recommend from there on out. But I really had a lot of fond memories of Chain Lightning early on, and it just does a great amount of damage that you can really just pump out down a hallway when people are storming after you group by group. So I would recommend playing around with those for sure. Finally, there's the Demon Hunter, my favorite class, and I think I really need to say the least about the Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter is in a very strong place right now. There was a nerf to the smokescreen ability the day that I made my Demon Hunter, so I never got to see what it used to be, but from the moment I started playing him, it really just felt completely powerful to me. I don't think I really struggled much at all, except for maybe Vortex Elites, because those are just annoying. Jailers are pretty annoying too, but in general I pretty much just mowed through everything. Again, tried a lot of the abilities, but very early on pretty much just stuck with the same stuff. Multi-shot was pretty excellent when I got it. The lightning balls for your elemental arrow are pretty amazing too. Those are actually where I spent most of my time through the leveling process, because especially with a good two-hander, you can really just pump those out endlessly. Only about 10 hatred, and that just takes forever to drain all the way through. So multi-shot is great in the beginning, but damage-wise, I'd say lightning orbs are absolutely on par, and you can just spam them for so long. It's really ridiculous with all the big crowds coming at you. You feel just completely invincible. For bosses, Impale is still very nice. Lightning orbs are nice in some situations if the bosses are spawning ads around them, but in general, Impale is going to be more damage for that kind of stuff, I think. Once you get level 59, which if you're level 59 you probably don't need any of these tips anymore, but you get a really amazing ability for tentacles for your elemental arrow, and that just does insane damage, of course. If you've seen any kind of demon hunter videos around the internet at level 60, you're seeing them use that ability. So that's absolutely incredible. So hope you get to 59 fast and enjoy those. For the other abilities, I would say it's pretty basic. I like having caltrops on pretty much all the time because it's low resource. You can be as defensive as you want to be. You can put a ton of them down, and if something's really giving you trouble, those are just amazing. Vault was almost always on my bar just because even though you have caltrops for defensive stuff, it's really nice to have it for those situations where you just need a little extra something. I also had the passive to increase your speed after you vault, and sometimes there's fast mobs, sometimes there's just frost orbs everywhere. There's all kinds of situations where you'd want a little extra speed. So even if you're not trying to do any speed runs or anything, you're just leveling normally, it's just really nice and convenient. I mean, just getting around, there's a lot of these big wide open areas when you're not necessarily fighting all these packs in a row, so I would say Vault's pretty nice too. Other than that, Smokescreen is nice for some bosses, Prep is nice for Discipline whenever you want it, and Shadow Power is nice when you get a Ruin in the high 50s, so really just play around with it. There's other good things to use too, Companion's great, so yeah, just have fun. Hope you guys really enjoy leveling, because I've had so much fun with this game, so hope you guys do too.